Hi there, it's Matt here, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I want to talk about something that has happened to a lot of us. Picture this. It is 11:15 on a weeknight. You have brushed your teeth, you have set your alarm, you have every intention of falling asleep, and then you reach for your phone. Just a quick check, just to see if anything happened in the last 20 minutes since you last looked. You open one or two apps. You start scrolling. The content is not really even enjoyable. It is news you did not ask for, opinions that raise your pulse, videos that vanish from memory the moment the next one loads. And when you finally put the phone down and look at the clock, it is 12:45, sometimes later. You have lost over an hour. You did not plan to. You could not seem to stop. And now you have to wake up in 6 hours. That behavior has a name now. It is called Doomscrolling, and the science of what it does to your sleep and through your sleep to your mental health has become far clearer in the last few years than most people realize. So let me walk you through it. Social media as a concept is younger than most people assume. The first platform that looked anything like what we would recognize today, a site where you could create a profile, list your connections, and browse the networks of others, launched in 1997. It was called 6 Degrees, and it lasted about 4 years before folding. But the blueprint it left behind turned out to be one of the most consequential architectural drawings of the digital age. Think of 6 Degrees as a prototype, a first sketch on a napkin. What followed was a rapid sequence of redesigns, each one more ambitious, more immersive, and more addictive than the last. Friendster arrived in 2002, MySpace in 2003, Facebook in 2004, initially just a directory for Harvard students, Twitter in 2006, which turned personal broadcasting into a mass habit, Instagram in 2010, which made the image the unit of social currency, and TikTok in 2016, which handed control of what you see almost entirely to an algorithm. Each platform did not merely add a feature. Each redefined the relationship between the person and the screen. The regulatory response to all of this has been, to put it charitably, measured, and the demand side kept pace. Survey more than 1 million American adolescents over the span of a decade, and the trajectory is vertical. In 2008, roughly half of 12th graders visited social media sites almost every day. By 2016, that figure was 82%. The average 12th grader in 2016 was spending more than twice as much time online as in 2006, and total daily digital media time, online browsing, texting, and social media combined, reached approximately 6 hours per day. 6 hours. That is around the amount of time that most of them spend in a classroom. It is also, if you stop and think about it, roughly the length of a curtailed night's sleep, which is precisely what many of them are getting. And by 2018, 95% of US adolescents owned a smartphone. That single statistic changes the nature of the problem entirely. Social media was no longer something you sat down to use at a computer during designated online time, the way you might sit down at a piano. It became something you carried in your pocket into every room of your life, available on demand at any hour with no one watching, including, and this is the part that matters most for our purposes today, your bedroom at midnight. The smartphone did not create social media addiction, but it removed every remaining barrier between the impulse and the act. Social media use is not spread evenly across 3 large data sets covering more than 221,000 adolescents aged 13 to 18 in the United States and the United Kingdom. A consistent pattern appears. Girls spend significantly more time on social media than boys. Boys spend more time gaming. Girls spend more time on the platforms that are built around social comparison, social feedback, and emotional content. And that distinction matters, because heavy digital media use, defined as 5 or more hours per day, is associated with lower psychological well-being compared to light use. and those associations are stronger among girls. Think of it like a dial on an amplifier. Everyone who uses social media heavily has the volume turned up. But for adolescent girls, the amplifier appears to be wired into a more sensitive circuit. The same input produces a louder output. Now, I want to be careful here. These are associations, not proof of causation on their own, but the consistency of the pattern across multiple samples, 2 countries, and different measures of well-being makes it difficult to set aside. A separate analysis tracking media used trends across more than 1 million adolescents found that total daily digital media time roughly doubled between 2006 and 2016, with the steepest increases occurring in precisely the demographic groups now reporting the highest levels of distress. And when you layer the sleep data on top of it, which is what we are about to do, then the picture becomes considerably harder to ignore. For a while, doomscrolling was just a word people used to describe a thing they felt guilty about doing on the internet. It had no formal definition, no measurement instrument, no place in the research literature. But that has changed.
A partner of today's podcast is Caraway. Now, we are well into the new year, which means that most New Year's resolutions have probably quietly fallen by the wayside. But my promise to cook more at home remains alive, and that is in no small measure due to my Caraway cookware. Now, I've mentioned it before, I study the neuroscience of sleep, which I think is probably one of the most complex biological systems that we know. Yet somehow, I cannot cook an egg without creating a carbon-based archaeological artifact. It's terrible. My relationship with cookware previously has been apply heat, forget about it, hear smoke alarm, and then apologize to my wife. But Caraway's ceramic coating is so naturally non-stick that I cannot burn a single thing. It's remarkable. Eggs slide off rather than welding themselves permanently to the pan, and cleanup takes just 90 seconds because of that non-stick material. Just add warm water, rinse, and you're done. Also, the non-toxic ceramic coating matters a great deal to me. It is third-party tested and it has no forever chemicals. That really is essential. I should also note that there are over 100,000 people who've given Caraway 5-star ratings, so I'm not the only one to be raving about them. They've also released a new kitchen timer and an expanded Bakeware Plus collection. All of that makes me look, because I now have it replete in my kitchen, as though I've seriously got my kitchen skills together. It's desperately misleading, but it is so appreciated. So if you buy the cookware set, it will save you up to $190 versus buying it all individually. That's what I ended up going for. And you can get a discount. So if you visit carawayhome.com/Matt Walker, you will get an additional 10% off, even an additional 10% off above and beyond the $190 that you save. So again, that is carawayhome.com/Matt Walker. Or if you're at checkout, just use the code Matt Walker, all one word, and you will get your discount. So that's Caraway non-toxic kitchenware made modern.
A peer-reviewed study across 3 separate samples, more than 1,250 participants in total, developed and validated a Doomscrolling scale. What it measures is a specific behavioral pattern, the compulsive, prolonged consumption of negative online content, typically via social media feeds, that the person finds difficult to stop, despite experiencing no enjoyment or benefit from continuing. Scores on this scale are significantly associated with fear of missing out, social media addiction, neuroticism, and psychological distress. The distress, in turn, mediates the relationship between doomscrolling and reduced overall well-being. Think of it like a vending machine that only dispenses worry. You keep putting coins in, you keep getting the same product, and at no point does the machine offer you anything nourishing. But you cannot walk away from it. That is doom scrolling, and it is measurably different from just simply spending a lot of time on social media. Here is where it connects directly to sleep. A second study, this one involving 2,885 university students, found that doom scrolling mediates the bidirectional relationship between insomnia and depression. In plain language, poor sleep drives doom scrolling worsens depression, and depression feeds back into poorer sleep. Each turn of the cycle tightens the loop, and the phone sitting on the nightstand is the engine that keeps it spinning. I want you to sit with that for a moment. The person who cannot sleep reaches for the very device that will make their sleep worse. The content they consume raises their emotional temperature at the exact hour when it needs to cool. And the worse they feel the next day, the more susceptible they become to doing it again the following night. It is a feedback loop that no one designed deliberately, but one that the architecture of social media sustains effortlessly. The evidence that social media disrupts sleep in young people is no longer preliminary. It is no longer a handful of small studies that could be explained away by confounds or coincidence. A systematic review covering 42 studies of youth aged 16 to 25 found that excessive social media use was significantly associated with poor sleep quality. Across 24 of 36 cross-sectional studies, the association reached statistical significance. 6 prospective cohort studies were also included, studies that followed people forward in time, which gives us a stronger basis for talking about direction. And the review found something else, something that changes how you should think about this. Poor sleep quality mediated the relationship between social media use and poor mental health. Sleep was not just a casualty, it was a transmission line. Damage the sleep, and the mental health effects follow downstream like contamination moving through a water supply. And this is not a phenomenon confined to one country or one culture. Analyze 86,542 adolescents across 18 European and North American countries, and the same pattern holds. Problematic social media use is consistently associated with shorter sleep duration and later bedtimes, regardless of healthcare system, national culture, or geographic region. Whatever social media is doing to sleep, it is doing it everywhere. So what precisely is it doing? The answer involves at least 3 mechanisms, and they do not operate in isolation. They work in concert, layering on top of one another, each one making the next more potent. Understanding them individually is the first step toward understanding why the combined effect is so much greater than any single factor would predict. One mechanism you may immediately think of is blue light, but not so fast. You almost certainly believe, because you have been told repeatedly by more or less everyone, that the blue light pouring out of your phone at night is suppressing your melatonin, and that this suppressed melatonin is why you cannot fall asleep. It is a tidy story. And a growing body of experimental work, including a well-controlled tablet study in healthy teenagers and a recent theoretical review synthesizing 11 independent experiments, suggests that the tidy story may be wrong. Not wrong in the dramatic way, wrong in a far more interesting way. Think of melatonin and sleep onset as 2 dials on an old stereo. The assumption, mine, yours, most of the fields, has been that the dials are wired together. Turn melatonin down with bright evening screen light and sleep onset drifts later in lockstep. But run the experiment. Put 16 adolescents through 3 separate nights with a bright tablet, a dim tablet, and a blue filtered tablet before bed, and measure their sleep with the full polysomnography kit. Brain waves, eye movements, the lot. What comes back is not what the headlines would predict. No significant difference in how long it takes them to fall asleep. No significant difference in slow wave sleep. No significant difference in dream sleep. The alerting effect on their reaction times is real, but small enough to be in the researchers' own language, of minimal clinical significance. The bright screen did something to their brains. It just did not delay their sleep. And then pool 11 of these experiments together, different labs, different countries, different participants, different screens, different designs, and a consistent, stubborn pattern emerges. The melatonin suppression is there. It shows up again and again. But the sleep onset delays are tiny, inconsistent, and in several studies actually run in the opposite direction. People fell asleep faster under the bright screen. The researchers behind the review call this an uncoupling, a quiet word for what is, in truth, a rather significant problem for the story we have all been telling. The two dials, it turns out, were never wired together in the way we assumed, which raises a question worth sitting with for the rest of this episode. If blue light is not the thing keeping you awake, what is? A partner of today's podcast is Pique, spelled P-I-Q-U-E. The pu'er tea, it's pronounced pu'er, represents fermented tea science at its most sophisticated. This is a living tea containing naturally occurring prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. Given the importance of gut microbiome health, this caught my attention immediately. The biochemistry. These compounds support gut flora diversity, which affects metabolic function, immune response, and cognitive performance through multiple pathways. The tea provides antioxidants for cellular vitality and supports healthy aging mechanisms. What's remarkable is the sourcing. 250-year-old wild tea trees from pristine forests. The nutrient density and potency far exceed standard cultivated varieties. How I use it. Mid-morning preparation around 10:30, particularly before long teaching sessions, or when I need sustained energy without excessive caffeine. 1 packet steeped in hot water. The taste is earthy and remarkably complex. It has a depth that evolves as you drink it. It's become part of my daily ritual. After consistent use, I've noticed improved, more even energy distribution throughout the day without afternoon crashes. You can get 20% off for life, plus a complimentary gift at peaklife.com/mattwalker. The first mechanism is cognitive and emotional arousal. And this is where the picture gets more interesting. Imagine 2 television sets sitting side by side. One is playing a nature documentary. The other is streaming a live feed of every conversation anyone has ever had about you, updated in real time with a comments section. Which one do you think would keep you awake longer? That, in essence, is the difference between passive screen use and interactive social media. Active social media engagement, posting, commenting, scrolling through personally relevant content, generates a level of psychological and physiological arousal that passive activities like watching television simply do not match. Social media contains your social world, your friendships, your comparisons, your notifications, your anxieties. It is personally relevant in a way that a documentary about penguins, however excellent, is not. A prospective systematic review of adolescence confirmed this. Social media was associated with later sleep timing and more variable sleep schedules compared to passive screen activities. The explanation is not complicated. Content that is personal and emotionally charged is harder to disengage from than content that is not. And doomscrolling, despite feeling passive, delivers a continuous stream of emotionally activating material with no natural endpoint. There is no final page, no closing credits, no moment where the algorithm says, that's enough for tonight. The second mechanism runs through a psychological chain that the research has now mapped in some detail. It starts with fear of missing out, FOMO, that familiar anxiety that something is happening online that you are not seeing. FOMO triggers rumination, repetitive circular thinking about what you might be missing, what others might be doing, what conversation you might be excluded from. Rumination drives bedtime procrastination, the act of delaying sleep without any practical reason, not because you have something to do, but because you cannot bring yourself to stop. And bedtime procrastination produces poor sleep quality. The pathway is sequential, and it has been confirmed empirically in a study of 213 participants aged 17 to 30. Separate studies of Chinese university students during the COVID-19 pandemic and after it replicated the core finding in different populations and different circumstances. FOMO mediates the link between phone dependency, bedtime procrastination, and poor sleep. The convergence across these samples makes this a reliable chain, not a one-off result. Think of it as a chain of dominoes. FOMO tips the first one. By the time the last one falls, you have been lying in bed for 45 minutes with your eyes open and your phone face down on the pillow, still glowing. The third mechanism is perhaps the most important, and it is also the most actionable. When you use social media matters more than how much you use it. A study of 467 Scottish adolescents found that nighttime specific social media use, the act of checking social media after going to bed, independently predicted poorer sleep quality, even after controlling for anxiety, depression, and self-esteem. Let me say that again because it is easy to miss how significant it is. The association between social media and poor sleep was not simply a reflection of the fact that anxious or depressed teenagers sleep badly and also happen to use social media. Nighttime use carried its own independent weight. It predicted poor sleep on its own terms. Longitudinal data deepens this. A study following more than 2,000 secondary school students found that parental rules restricting device use before sleep did protect sleep quality, but only among adolescents who were lower-level social media users. For those who were already deeply engaged, the rules made little difference. Prevention, it turns out, is considerably easier than reversal. One last distinction, and it is an important one. A recent systematic review found that problematic social media use, the compulsive loss of control variety, was significantly associated with sleep problems, whereas general frequency of use was a weaker predictor. It is not how many hours you spend on a platform that matters most. It is whether you can stop when you intend to. Think of it like the difference between someone who has a glass of wine with dinner and someone who opens a bottle intending to have one glass and finishes it. The quantity consumed might be similar on any given evening. The relationship to the behavior is fundamentally different. The person who spends 20 minutes on social media by choice and puts the phone away is in a very different position from the person who opens the app at 11 o'clock intending to check one thing and surfaces at 1 in the morning with no clear memory of how the time disappeared. And the relationship is bidirectional. People who sleep poorly are more likely to reach for their phones as a coping strategy, which worsens their sleep, which sends them back to the phone. The vicious cycle sits there waiting on the nightstand every single night.
A partner of today's podcast is an alternative to coffee that I've been using myself. As I think I probably mentioned on this podcast before, I am one of the individuals who is quite sensitive to caffeine based on my genetics, but I still like a similar beverage jumpstart to each day, and I do get sort of sleep inertia, and it's nice to have something that can lift you out of that, but without the jitters or all of that caffeine crash that some people may experience. That is where the supporter of today's podcast comes in, Mud Water, and it is spelled MUDWTR. So Mud Water. It is a popular coffee alternative, and Mud Water will blend cacao with varied mushrooms, and it has only a fraction of the caffeine of a cup of coffee, but it provides this, it's a really interesting, just sort of natural lift is the best way I can describe it. It's very pleasant and it has been working a treat for me. It also has all of the things that you want. It is 100% USDA certified organic. It is non-GMO, gluten-free, vegan, and kosher. If you would like to get a free offer, most people do, you can get a free frother, and that's one of those implements that you put in and it creates that lovely sort of froth on the top of your drink. And you can get some free samples of the coconut creamer. You can just go on over to Mudwater, that is mudwtr.com/Matt Walker. You will get the freebies. So again, that is mudwtr.com/Matt Walker, and you will get your free frother and your free coconut creamer. Okay, let's get back to the show.
So the question that matters now is, what can you actually do about it? And whether the evidence supports specific practical interventions. It does, and here they are. First, cap your daily social media use at approximately 30 minutes. Take 143 undergraduates, randomly assign half of them to limit Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat to 10 minutes per platform per day. Let the other half continue as normal and run it for 3 weeks. The limited use group showed significant reductions in loneliness and depression. The effect on depression was largest in those who entered the study with elevated symptoms, precisely the people most likely to be caught in doom-scrolling loops. 30 minutes is not zero. It is enough to reply to a friend, check in on what matters, and close the app before the algorithm has time to reel you deeper. Think of it as a budget. You would not hand your credit card to a shop assistant and say, charge whatever you like until I physically wrestle it away from you. But that is, in effect, what most of us do every evening with our attention. Second, try a structured 1-week break. Randomly assign 154 people, average age about 30, to stop using Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for 1 week, or to continue as usual. 1 week later, the break group showed significant improvements in well-being with reductions in depression and anxiety. The reductions were partially mediated by time specifically taken back from Twitter and TikTok. 1 week, that was enough. Not a permanent lifestyle overhaul, a 7-day experiment. The social media industry has, with characteristic understatement, not widely advertised this finding. Third, make your bedroom a phone-free zone. But know that timing matters. The longitudinal data shows that strict device-free bedroom rules protect sleep, but primarily among adolescents who have not yet developed compulsive usage patterns. Think of it like a flood barrier. It works beautifully if you build it before the water rises. After that, you need additional strategies. For parents, the implication is clear. Establish the rule early before habitual nighttime use takes root. For adults who are already well into the habit, a phone-free bedroom is still worth doing, but it may need to be paired with the usage caps or structured breaks described previously. Removing the device from the room removes the temptation, but it does not, on its own, address the underlying pull. Fourth, set a consistent pre-sleep social media cutoff. The evidence is clear that nighttime specific use is the strongest predictor of poor sleep, independent of everything else. Mood, anxiety, total daily usage, a defined cutoff time, ideally 60 to 90 minutes before your intended sleep, targets the single most disruptive behavior in this entire literature. You do not need to use social media less overall. You need to stop using it at a specific time each evening and do not pick it up again until morning. The phone can live in another room. It can charge in the kitchen. The notifications will still be there at 7 in the morning. And I promise you, not a single one of them will have been improved by you having read it at midnight instead. And fifth, simply monitor your own usage. In the randomized trial that tested the 30-minute limit, Both groups showed significant decreases in anxiety and FOMO over the 3 weeks on both groups, including the group that changed nothing about their behavior except knowing their usage was being tracked. The mere act of paying attention to how much time you spend on social media appears by itself to generate a degree of self-regulation. It is as though shining a light on the habit changes the habit even before you try to change it. Check your screen time report. Look at it daily and weekly. Notice which apps consume your evenings and at what hour the consumption tends to spike. You do not need a rigid plan on day one. You do not need to delete anything. Honest, non-judgmental awareness of your own patterns turns out to be a surprisingly effective place to start. Here then is what the science is telling us. Social media, particularly the compulsive, late-night, emotionally charged, algorithmically driven kind, interferes with sleep through multiple pathways that converge at the worst possible moment, the hour before you need to fall asleep. Doomscrolling sits at the center of all of them. It is not a character flaw. It is a behavior that can be measured, understood, and changed. The toolkit is modest, but real. Cap your usage. Try a week off. Get the phone out of the bedroom. Set a cutoff time. And pay attention to your own habits. None of these are a perfect solution. And the science still has questions to answer about exactly how and for whom these strategies work best. We need longer trials, larger samples, and objective sleep measures to go alongside the self-reports. But the direction of the evidence is not in doubt, and the interventions ask very little of you relative to what they offer in return: a cleaner transition from waking to sleeping, a quieter mind at the end of the day, and a better chance of getting the rest your brain and body are already asking for. Your sleep is not negotiable. The algorithm does not know that, and it does not care, but you do. And now you have the evidence to act on it. Thanks so much for listening. I really do appreciate you tuning in. Please take care of yourself, enjoy your waking days, and sleep a sound sleep tonight. Bye for now.